Single dad CEO discovers 3-year-old's amazing request. Can you share expired bread with mommy? Jake was knee-deep in outdated inventory when he stumbled upon the forgotten loaves, their stale scent wafting through the chaotic office, layered with the usual aroma of energy drinks and new ideas. A part of him wanted to toss them straight into the trash, but Mia's innocent voice echoed through the cluttered space, breaking through his concentrated haze. Can you share that expired bread with mommy? She asked, her big brown eyes shining with unfiltered curiosity. The question caught him off guard. His hand hovered over the moldy bread, confronted by a flood of emotions he hadn't prepared for: grief, guilt, a deep love for his daughter, and an ache of regret that twisted in his gut. Clara had been gone for years, her choice, her path, and Jake felt the sharp sting of abandonment every time he thought of their lost family. Memories crashed around him, laughter shared over breakfast, plans made around a flickering candle, dreams simmering under the fluorescent lights of their old life. How could he explain this rotten bread to Mia? What did he tell a 3-year-old about a father's pain and a mother's absence? He wrestled with his thoughts, feeling the weight of expectations heavy on his chest. His startup was his anchor, yet every night, he returned home to a joyful daughter, the laughter that filled their slightly chaotic apartment providing a salve for his wounds. Was he being selfish, letting Clara slip away while he focused on the grind? Or was he right in shielding Mia from the wreckage of a marriage he could barely face himself? As he prepared to discard the loaves, pressure gripped him tight. Can I simply throw away the remnants of my past? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to honor Mia's request, Jake found a flicker of inspiration amid the decay. Perhaps he could transform this bitter moment into something greater. What if that expired bread became a mission? An experiment in connecting with others, mending old wounds. But could he really step into that kitchen space, where memories of Clara lingered like a ghost? The thought twisted at his insides. Cooking had once been a shared joy between them, blurring the lines between love and art. Pushing the fear aside, Jake decided to try something new, a grassroots effort to share any food he could salvage. As the days passed, he met Charlie, an old bakery owner whose life stories unlocked Jake's grief. With each hour shared kneading dough and discussing loss, Jake clawed toward forgiveness, inching closer to reconciling his fragmented heart with the hope of preventing Mia from facing the same pain he felt. Yet, even as hope blossomed through the cracks, a tightening ball of dread settled in his chest. What if Clara reached out again? What if she wanted more than his forgiveness? The phone buzzed one evening, a notification lighting up the screen, and Jake's heart raced, torn between the effort of opening an old wound and the fear of dragging Mia into the chaos once more. What would he choose? Jake stared at his phone, the buzzing sound reverberating through the heavy air of his cluttered office. The notification was from a number he both recognized and dreaded. Clara. What could she possibly want now? The question echoed in his mind, and the flood of emotions he had only recently begun to untangle threatened to consume him once again. He could simply ignore it. But that thought left a bitter taste in his mouth. After everything, could he really just turn his back on her existence, on the choices they made together? The negotiator in him began weighing the practical pros and cons, yet that didn't quite align with the turmoil pounding against his chest. He needed to address this, not as a business decision but as a father. Mia deserved honesty. The kitchen in his thoughts shifted from memories of shared moments to a blank space stocked only with uncertainty. He envisioned the flour-covered countertop and the transformed loaves, each piece a story of resilience, of life redefined by pressing choices. This wasn't just about bread, it was about mending fragments of a life that had been splintered by neglect and abandonment. He wasn't ready to face Clara, but he had to face the truth before Mia grasped its implications. Taking a deep breath, Jake put his phone aside. He needed clarity, not an old argument or a recycled discussion of their past incompatibilities. That evening, as Mia played with her toys, he quietly set up his space in the kitchen, each ingredient a building block toward new possibilities. He felt lighter, almost liberated, his dread momentarily giving way to fundamental resolve. With dough in hand, he created two shapes: a shared loaf for tomorrow and a smaller one decorated with Mia's favorite cartoon character for her. This was more than cooking, it was a lesson in hope, resilience, and determination. As he kneaded the dough, visions of opening his heart to Clara shifted into focus. If he could confront her, perhaps, they could redefine their history. And, if he was brave enough, he could promise Mia that some bread and some truths needed to be shared rather than discarded. Days turned into a routine punctuated by calls from Clara that Jake could not ignore. He had begun preparing his responses, gathering the courage to either repudiate their shared memories or embrace the potential for growth. Each conversation brought fresh revelations about his own feelings. When she finally asked to see Mia, he hesitated. The thought of opening that door filled him with conflicting emotions. The night before their reunion, Jake lay awake, grappling with doubts that had resurfaced. It wasn't just about Clara revisiting their past, it was about Mia's future and how he could shield her from pain while still providing the love she needed. The next morning, he shared the bread with Mia, ensuring she understood everything was a work in progress just like them. He saw her delight, and for a moment, clarity flooded through him. They could rebuild their lives, one loaf at a time. As he prepared to meet Clara, he felt the swell of determination guide him. The time had come to face that haunting question: could they rebuild what was lost? More importantly, could they forge a future not bound by their past? With his heart racing and the doorbell ringing, Jake took one last breath, caught between the memories, the mistakes, and the fragile hope that pushed him forward. Would this meeting set the tone for recovery, or would it shatter the delicate balance he fought to maintain? He stepped toward the door, ready to find out what would unfold. Jake opened the door and immediately felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Clara stood there, a blend of nervousness and resolve etched across her features. He had anticipated this moment in varied shades: relief, anxiety, hope, and fear all wrapped into one. He forced himself to breathe through the chaos swirling within him. "Hi, Jake," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. The vulnerability in her tone struck him, disarming his initial impulse to retreat into a more practiced assertiveness. Instead, he gestured for her to come inside, guiding her through the doorway into the kitchen, a place that had become a sanctuary for him, a haven of creation and growth. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the room, and Mia emerged from her toy-strewn kingdom, her bright eyes instantly gleaming with recognition. "Mommy!" she exclaimed, innocence shining through her excitement. Clara knelt down, enveloping their daughter in a tender embrace that momentarily soothed the heavy atmosphere. Jake watched the scene unfold, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. A part of him craved to intervene, to reclaim some semblance of control as old frustrations pressed against the edges of his heart. Yet, another part, perhaps the part molded by the quiet afternoons spent baking, understood that Mia needed this connection. So he suppressed the urge to speak, allowing the moment to breathe. As the initial warmth faded, the realities of their situation reasserted themselves. "I've missed you both," Clara said, her voice quaking slightly. "But I also know there's a lot we need to talk about." The weight of her words hung in the air, and Jake nodded, bracing himself. This would determine whether they could truly move forward or would only repeat the same patterns. He leaned against the countertop, his mind racing through the myriad of emotions that now fused into determination. "Mia, why don't you pick out something to play with?" Jake suggested, half hoping she would dive back into her world of imagination while he and Clara navigated this delicate conversation. With nods and a bubbly excitement, Mia scampered off, leaving the two of them alone to confront the mess they had made. "Jake, I know I wasn't there when you needed me to be," Clara started, her eyes pleading for understanding. "I want to make things right for Mia. I want us to be a family, if you'll let me." There it was, the heart of the issue laid bare, raw and unadorned. Jake brushed a hand through his hair, agitating a growing unease within. The echoes of their past tethered him, each memory an anchor they struggled to dislodge. "Clara, are we really prepared to have this conversation?" he challenged softly, holding her gaze. We can't erase what happened. I'm not asking you to forget, she rushed on. I just want a chance to prove that I can be there for both of you. Her sincerity flickered like a flame held up to strong winds. There was a desperation in her voice that tugged at something deep within him, battling his instinct to erect walls. Maybe his journey through the kitchen taught him that rebuilding meant reshaping the raw materials of their lives, not discarding them entirely. I'm willing to talk, but it has to be different this time, he replied, fighting against the rising doubt that rattled in his stomach. For Mia, and for us. Their eyes locked, and somewhere in the depths of that stare, he felt a fragile thread being woven, a chance to forge a new reality from the embers of their past. The conversation was just beginning, and he could sense that both their futures hung precariously in the balance. But just then, Mia burst back into the kitchen, cradling a tattered book adorned with colorful illustrations. Look, Mommy. She beamed. Can we read together? The simplicity of their daughter's request served as a gentle reminder of what mattered most. Jake glanced at Clara, whose expression shifted to one of yearning. In that moment, he understood that perhaps the path forward required a dedication to listening, to forging connections even as uncertainty loomed. However, one question gnawed at the edges of his conscience. Could extending an olive branch to Clara, a rekindling of hope, risk destabilizing the progress he had made for himself and Mia? As they settled onto the floor beside their daughter, opening the book together, the delicate tension in Jake's heart only deepened. The turn of a page might lead to the truth he feared or the healing they desperately needed. The next chapter of their lives was about to unfold, but would it illuminate the way forward or cast shadows on old fears? As Mia's enthusiasm filled the room, Jake felt an unexpected warmth washing over him, momentarily easing the tightness in his chest. Each turn of the page drew him further into the embrace of innocence and imagination, yet the undercurrents of tension still pulsed in his mind. Could he truly navigate the complexities of Clara's return while ensuring Mia remained untouched by the turbulence? He felt a deepening chasm, the precarious balance between hope and skepticism threatening to spill over. Clara's eyes danced over the illustrations as she read aloud, her voice weaving magic that captivated Mia. Jake admired how effortlessly she engaged their daughter, noting the joy that illuminated Clara's features, a joy he feared could be fleeting. He wrestled with the thought. The nurturing instinct that had surged to the forefront of their conversation was palpable, yet it was intertwined with the long and painful history that loomed like a ghost in the corner of their lives. Mommy, read it again. Mia chirped at the end of the story, her delight echoing against the kitchen walls. Yes, repeat it. Jake echoed, but the edge in his tone was there, whether intentional or not. He questioned whether his attempt at engaging was truly focused on encouraging Mia or if it reflected his own necessity to grasp at whatever control still lingered in this newfound reconnection. Mia, we'll read more later, Clara said gently, her gaze flickering over to Jake, seeking his support. He nodded almost imperceptibly. They would have to discuss the real matters soon, but for now, it was essential that he remained present in this moment for their daughter. As the evening rolled into twilight, the atmosphere shifted. Google searches for co-parenting strategies ran through Jake's mind. Planning, strategizing, these had become his murky lifelines in mitigating the damage of the past. He had buried himself in work, his career as a chef taking off during their time apart, a success story he wore as armor. But now, standing at the edge of an emotional precipice, he realized he could not rely solely on his professional achievements to anchor him. After dinner, the conversation finally crept back in. Jake found himself in a position of authority and inadvertent responsibility of being the rational adult in the room, yet he craved clarity for himself more than anything. Clara, he began cautiously, what do you see as your role moving forward? She hesitated, the softness of their earlier exchanges dissipating slightly, forming a stark dichotomy of vulnerability and the inevitable weight of seriousness. I want to be a proactive part of Mia's life, she replied, determination lining her words. I'm ready to be the mother she deserves. Jake's heartbeat quickened. There was a stark honesty in Clara's admission, but it stirred up an unsettling question within him. How could he trust her commitment? He remembered the tumultuous past, a fabric woven with promises and disappointments. Still, a brilliant, albeit dangerous thought ignited within. If he did not challenge her, how would they ever dismantle the walls built over years of miscommunication and hurt? Okay, he countered, his voice steady. Then let us outline what that looks like. I want to ensure everything we do is best for Mia, and I need to understand how you plan to stay engaged, emotionally and practically. Her eyes reflected a flicker of surprise at his proactive stance, and it momentarily ignited hope within him. Clara took a breath, clearly acknowledging the weight of his request. I know I can't just waltz back in and expect everything to be fine, she said, her voice reclaiming its earlier vulnerability. I want to really show you both that I can commit to this plan together with you. The conversation ebbed and flowed between frustration and tentative optimism, but maybe, just maybe this newfound dialogue hinted at a transformative potential. However, Jake still wondered if her determined words could manifest into steadfast actions, apprehensively aware that every promise is tested by time. As the night stretched onward, the tension in his chest remained a contrasting force against the glimmer of cautious hope. He needed to explore the depths of his own convictions as well. Was he secure enough in his own identity as a father to allow Clara's return and still nurture Mia amidst the uncertainty? Jake resisted the urge to pull away emotionally, yet the shadows of apprehension danced around him. Could openness be his salvation, or was it the precipice from which he might fall? The questions loomed and the room became charged with potential transformation. Would the commitment from Clara open up a space for genuine healing, or would it lead to a new set of complications that could unravel everything he fought for? He faced the unsettling realization that the journey before him could not only reshape his relationship with Clara but with the very essence of who he was as a father. He knew the moment had come to face what was truly at stake, both for himself and for Mia. Where would their choices lead? The night held the silent answer, but it flickered just out of reach, like a story waiting to be told. The following morning greeted Jake with an unexpected sense of resolve. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window, casting a warm glow over the breakfast table set for three. This was the first time they would share a meal as a unified effort, and the weight of that prospect pressed against him. The rhythms of daily life had all but stopped when Clara left. Now, they were poised to establish new routines together, but he felt a tremor in that anticipation. As Jake flipped pancakes, he could feel Clara's presence behind him, an ethereal shadow of both nostalgia and anxiety. When he turned, he was met with her gentle smile, a stark contrast to the emotional upheaval of the night before. It was a mix of hope and uncertainty, and as much as he wanted to bask in the morning light of that moment, his heart thrummed with questions. Hey, she said, pouring juice for Mia, who was eagerly bouncing in her chair. Ready for the day? Yeah, just thinking about how we should structure our time with her, Jake replied, trying to maintain a pragmatic approach. What do you think about taking Mia to the park after breakfast? Let her run around, enjoy some fresh air. It's a good start. Clara nodded, but the shadow of skepticism clouded her eyes. That sounds good. But maybe afterward we should find a quiet moment to just talk. About everything. Jake felt his stomach nodding again. More conversations. The prospect made him uneasy, but he also understood its necessity. They needed to outline boundaries and expectations. He wondered if such discussions were too soon but projected outward to offer her a nod of agreement. Mia, are you excited to go to the park? Jake directed his enthusiasm toward their daughter, whose happiness had been the compass guiding his tumultuous emotions. She held her hands in the air, her pigtails bouncing in rhythm. Yes. I'll play. Maya exclaimed, her delight serving as a buoy in the sea of uncertainty swirling around Jake and Clara. As he served breakfast, he let the joy of the moment wash over him, briefly closing off the darker thoughts clawing at his consciousness. Yet, his mind would not remain quiet for long. Each laugh from Mia sparked a cascade of introspection. Had he overestimated Clara's capability to be a committed mother? Was he merely creating space for another set of disappointments? After breakfast, they set off for the park. Each step felt heavier, and Jake found himself grappling with the duality of their situation. Observing Mia's pure delight as she chased pigeons and squealed was a form of catharsis, yet a whirlwind of disquiet tightened his chest. Jake and Clara's lingering words from the previous night flitted through his mind, fragmenting into self-doubt. He wondered if he was making the right choice, if throwing open the door again would expose Mia to another cycle of instability. Clara watched their daughter with an eagerness that was palpable, yet the past was a specter, and he found himself analyzing every flicker of emotion crossing her face. They took a seat on a nearby bench, shadowed under a thicket of trees. Watching Mia playing, Clara's posture shifted slightly, drawing Jake's attention back to her. "I know it's nerve-wracking," she began cautiously, "but we have to trust that this can work." Jake met her gaze with intention. "It's not just about you and me. It's about Mia. She deserves the best from both of us." "I completely agree," Clara replied, her eyes softening. "Then let us show her our commitment. I can't change the past, but I can invest my whole self moving forward. You know, I took the last few weeks to really reflect on my choices." A moment of silence stretched, each lost in their thoughts, yet both aware of the fragile ground they were treading together. "What did you discover?" Jake inquired, his curiosity piqued by her vulnerability. "I learned about the importance of being present, not only physically but emotionally. I forgot how essential it is to be there for people when it counts, and not just when it feels easy," Clara admitted, her conviction sparking a resonance in Jake. He realized that they were at a pivotal moment, not only for their burgeoning relationship but also in shaping their shared vision for Mia's future. Jake knew he had to confront his own fears and uncertainties more directly, understanding that these revelations could illuminate pathways previously shrouded in doubt. Would they both commit to this newfound awareness, or was it merely a fleeting moment in the inevitable cycle of their past? As he wrestled with these questions, a new understanding of partnership dawned on Jake. The time had come for a real confrontation and honest dialogue. In the distance, Mia called out, "Daddy! Mommy! Look at me!" She was twirling, her laughter rising like a melody in the air. Jake and Clara exchanged glances, both aware that the significance of this day would unravel unpredictably. As he watched his daughter, the clarity of their choice loomed. Would they be brave enough to nurture this commitment through the unknown? And in that pivotal moment, he sensed an awakening within him. Perhaps he could show Clara the strength of shared purpose in nurturing their daughter. Yet, the question lingered: could commitment become the bridge to repair their fractured history, or would it lead them into the uncertainty of familiar pain? The vibrant colors of the park painted a backdrop for Jake's burgeoning realization, yet the weight of his thoughts intertwined with the zeal of Mia's laughter. As their daughter frolicked with the other children, Jake turned his gaze back to Clara. The sunlight danced upon her hair, illuminating both her warmth and the tension that lay unspoken between them. "Let us talk after this," he said softly, the words slipping out more as a necessity than a choice. They needed clarity, and he was about to step into uncharted territory. Clara's expression affirmed his thought but didn't entirely illuminate his anxiety. She was nodding again, yet her eyes conveyed a complex mixture of hope and fear. Jake felt propelled forward, mindful of the moment's fragility. Seeing Mia leap into the air, chasing after a bright kite, stirred something inside him, a jolt of determination. He demanded from himself the same level of courage he asked of Clara. If they were going to step into this life together, he would have to let go of the past's grasp. The very first step, he realized, rested on him. He had to model trust if he expected to feel trusted. "Mia!" he called, his voice steadying as she spun around to face him, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of play. "Why don't you show your mom how fast you can run?" As she darted away, Clara chuckled, a sound that flooded Jake with warmth. The laughter of parental joy was unfamiliar yet comforting, and for a moment, their protective instincts intertwined, stitching a hesitant bond in the air around them. "Jake," Clara started, breaking their trance. "I really mean it. I've tried to understand what it means to be present and to authentically reconnect." Her vulnerability was evident, setting the stage for something deeper. "That's a good start," he replied, masking the concern that threatened to bleed into his tone. "What does that mean for us?" "For Mia?" Clara hesitated, and in that pause, Jake felt the tension coil tighter around them. It was time to dig deeper, to confront their fears head-on, fears not of each other, but what they could offer Mia. Maybe it means more honest conversations, she finally articulated, her voice gaining steadiness as she continued. We can't keep pretending that everything is fine or that we magically know how to parent together again. What if we truly examined ourselves and where we stand? The thought crystallized for Jake. It wasn't enough to say he wanted to be present, he needed actionable steps, ways to demonstrate that commitment beyond words. How do we do that? He pressed, a concoction of hope and doubt swirling within him. Let us set aside some time. Regularly. A structure, maybe even weekly? Clara suggested, her eyes glinting with an idea that felt novel yet daunting. No distractions. Just you, me, and a conversation about our progress. What works and what doesn't, kind of like a status check like you would in your job. A protective shield of the professional life he led seeped into this intimate arrangement, sparking something he hadn't considered through all the emotional noise. What if he approached their relationship as he did professional development? Devise a plan, execute it, review, and iterate. I could manage that, he murmured, excitement mingling with fear. Jake acknowledged the challenge ahead. Honest assessments laid bare might lead to uncomfortable truths that lingered long enough to scare them both. But, he cautioned, it will mean facing our shortcomings. I'm aware, Clara replied, her voice penetrating the cloud of uncertainty surrounding him. But it doesn't always have to be heavy. We can also celebrate the small wins, the good moments we will have too. We're learning, she added, her tone lightening with tentative optimism. As they watched Mia's uninhibited joy unfold, a sense of shared purpose began to form, weaving together the threads that had previously unraveled. This was more than just parenting, it was a partnership rediscovered. They were becoming two actors in the same play, learning the script while performing, adjusting their roles as they navigated the shifting dynamics of their relationship. Yet even in the happiness of this shared moment, doubt lurked at the edges. Could they really sustain such a structure amid life's unpredictability? The sincerity of Clara's commitment shimmered before him, but his worry gnawed still. What if this structure faltered and exposed vulnerabilities they both buried? And as if resonating with his internal conflict, Mia skidded to a stop near them, her voice bright. Let us play family, she proposed, her eyes wide as saucers with excitement. Jake felt Clara's gaze on him, but it was the benevolence in their daughter's request that ignited something within him. They were not merely sharing a moment, they were redefining what it meant to rebuild, to create a family anew. Perhaps the foundation for that family was not in the perfection of their processes, but in their commitment to try, week after week. As the afternoon sun dipped behind the trees, casting elongated shadows, Jake grasped Clara's hand, a silent acknowledgement of their collective intention. But before they could respond to Mia, a pang of tension surged through him. The past still loomed, a thick fog obstructing their path. They needed to confront it, and with Clara's suggestion lingering in the air, Jake couldn't help but wonder, would their next conversation finally unravel the truths they feared most? Jake sat on the park bench, the world around him vibrating with the laughter of children and the rustling leaves whispering tales of the day. Yet, his mind was a whirlwind, consumed by the conversation that lay ahead with Clara. There was so much at stake. Every ounce of courage he'd felt earlier slipped through his fingers, leaving only a tightening knot of anxiety in its wake. His thoughts drifted to their plans, weekly check-ins about their progress. While the idea had sparked a small flame of hope, another part of him recoiled at the prospect of revealing the deep cavern of insecurities they both harbored. What if they dug up more than just feelings? What if the process laid bare the chasms that had formed between them? He simply couldn't shake the feeling that change was coming, and it wouldn't necessarily be the pleasant kind. Mia, come here, he called, trying to inject levity into the tension draping over him like a heavy blanket. She scampered over, her face glowing with delight, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around her parents. Can we build a fort later? She asked, eyes sparkling with innocence. Jake couldn't help but crack a smile, momentarily illuminating the shadows that had beset him. Of course, we can, he replied with a genuine lightness, the significance of their family's future temporarily eclipsed by the brightness of his daughter's world. Yet, even as he spoke, he felt the dread of adult responsibilities inching back. Clara approached, her presence grounding yet equally daunting. "You ready?" she asked, steadying his gaze. He could see the vulnerability in her eyes, mirroring his own worries. She seemed to sense his hesitation. "Jake, it's okay to be scared. Change is never easy." He nodded, deeply aware that acknowledging fear didn't create a shield for what lay ahead. "Let us just be honest, okay?" he articulated, taking a deep breath as he steeled himself. "Absolutely," Clara affirmed, and he could see the resolve infusing her voice. "This is about us, our family. We owe it to Mia to get this right." As they found a quiet corner of the park, Jake felt a bond beginning to crystallize, a mutual determination to rise beyond their past. Sitting together on the grass, Jake's heart raced. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a deep excavation into their shared history, a negotiation of futures, and ultimately, a revelation of identities that had become tangled and obscured over time. "What if we started by sharing how we feel about being parents individually?" Clara suggested, her brows slightly furrowed. "What do you love? What do you want to change?" Jake opened his mouth but hesitated. What did he love? The concept felt tainted by failure and fear. He had been so focused on getting it right that he lost touch with the joy of it outside of fleeting moments. A flicker of recognition ignited. He wanted a thriving family, he wanted to feel present. He wanted to showcase love, not just efficiency. "I love how Mia brings light into this darkness we've created. She deserves us at our best, and we've been anything but." "Yes," Clara replied earnestly. "And I felt so disconnected, trying to figure out where I fit, afraid of disappointing either of you." Her honesty engulfed him, igniting a fierce determination within him. Portions of his reality had begun shifting. He recalled a sentiment he often applied to his professional life: vulnerability breeds trust. In this moment, they were both excavating personal truths, laying bare their fears and hopes. He felt the solid ground beneath him shift, revealing a landscape previously clouded by doubt. "Let us not just talk about parental roles," Clara continued, her voice carrying a newfound strength. "What about our roles as partners? What can we achieve together?" Her query triggered an unraveling within him. They were tasked with something greater than just co-parenting. They needed to reignite their partnership. Would they have the courage to restructure not only how they communicated but also how they related to one another? The knot in his stomach twisted more tightly as the specter of past arguments flashed before him. Fragile moments had been marred by unmet expectations and silent judgments. But perhaps this was what it meant to truly confront one another, not just to acknowledge faults, but to honor and uplift each other's vulnerabilities as a source of growth. "We can forge new roles, create a new narrative," he breathed out, belief welling up inside him. "But we'll need to be honest about our shortcomings." As the conversation unraveled, the weight of their past seemed lighter, something they could confront and reshape together. But the impending challenge of maintaining this openness loomed large. Could they handle the inevitably raw and uncomfortable truths that lay ahead? And just as Jake felt a rush of hope emerge, the familiar pang of doubt crept back in. What if they found more than they were prepared to handle? Just as that thought solidified, a different voice echoed in the back of his mind, a nagging reminder of the fractures they needed to heal. "Jake," Clara said suddenly, interrupting his thoughts. "What if we set aside time outside our weekly check-ins to also explore each other's pasts, the good and the bad? I think we need to understand how we got here." A thrill of anxiety shot through him. Could confronting their past truly illuminate their path forward, or would it plunge them deeper into chaos? As the setting sun cast a warm embrace around them, Jake steadied himself for the conversations to come, aware that they stood on the precipice of something vital. Would they dare to take the leap? The following days oscillated between anticipation and trepidation, each moment suffocated by the weight of what was to come. Jake felt the world around him move in slow motion. Mundane tasks such as packing lunches and cleaning up after Mia felt monumental against the backdrop of change. Each morning, Clara would send him a tentative smile, an unspoken agreement stifled by the enormity of their discussions. Jake's mind constantly thrashed around the prospect of sharing their pasts unfiltered. The idea both terrified and intrigued him. Would digging into the past release pent-up fears or ignite more painful memories? Each time he considered it, he felt caught like a deer in headlights, paralyzed in indecision. One evening, as he tucked Mia into bed, her innocent chatter provided a brief reprieve from the gnawing anxiety. "Daddy, can we have pancakes tomorrow?" she asked, wide-eyed with phase 2 of her nightly ritual, the proclamation of breakfast desires. "Of course, princess," he responded, ruffling her hair before kissing her goodnight. But as he turned off the light, the echoed laughter from the earlier park visit drifted through his mind. Instead of sleep, Jake found himself in the kitchen, staring at a stack of unopened mail, and the scattered remnants of a work week that felt increasingly unmanageable. It seemed that while he was trying to heal his familial bonds, the demands of his job loomed larger than ever. He knew he needed to prioritize communication, first with Clara and then with his colleagues. That, however, would require him to confront the guilt that had shadowed him for too long. Jake made a decision to carve out time for his professional role. Earlier that day, he noticed a hopeful email from one of his teams suggesting innovative strategies for the upcoming quarter. He recognized his tendency to hold others at arm's length, but this felt like a moment to change that habit, too. He typed a response, outlining a plan to workshop ideas in a team meeting, deliberately nudging boundaries that he often kept rigid. The act of reaching out felt liberating. He would pivot from being a lone wolf burdened with expectations to wielding the collective strengths of his team. Later, he prepared a strategy overview that combined the raw data he'd collected with a vision for collaboration. It felt surreal as he processed his thoughts, echoing Clara's earlier insistence on the necessity of communication. He observed how each layer of openness could strengthen their family and career alike. As the reflection hit him, the juxtaposition struck deeper. The same principles applied at home were also valid in the office. He needed to view his colleagues not as mere task performers, but as partners in crafting the larger narrative of their work. Just as he planned to dive into their familial histories with Clara, he now felt compelled to unearth the innovative potential of his workforce. At the meeting, Jake felt the tremors of uncertainty tingle through him, knowing that while he might navigate his family's territory, the corporate world remained uncharted and identical in its need for vulnerability and engagement. Yet, he drew a breath and stepped up to facilitate. "Today is about collaboration. I want us to explore not just our assignments but our strengths, what makes us tick individually and collectively. Let us be open about our wins and losses," he announced, defying the impulse to keep things within tightly controlled parameters. A wave of eyes met him, uncertainty mirrored his own. But beneath that mirroring was a flicker of surprise, as if they were subconsciously waiting for someone to expose the truth of their human experience. In the following exchanges, ideas began flying, unshackled from the weight of judgment. Jake watched his colleagues transform, revealing hidden talents and insights he hadn't known existed. Each moment passed and he felt a lightness begin to swell in the room. Simultaneously, he registered a feeling of empowerment not just for his team but also for himself. He saw clearly that vulnerability was not a weakness but a pathway. This was what he needed at home with Clara: open dialogue about discomfort, shared history, and collaborative possibilities. When he returned home, he faced the night sky, stars twinkling violently against the fabric of time. The vastness mirrored the unknown that lay ahead. The sensation of forward momentum lingered. He was learning how to trust, not only in the process but in the people surrounding him both at home and work. As he reflected on the forthcoming conversations with Clara, he felt the stirrings of hope begin to outweigh the anxiety. Was it possible to unify the lessons of his personal and professional life? But just as the warmth began to envelop him, he wondered, were the connections he forged throughout the day strong enough to endure the turmoils of mutual pasts? Twittering chirps formed a background score in his thoughts, and the unmistakable tightening in his gut reminded him that while he could evolve, there remained untamed terrain ahead, dark corners where truths could provoke or bond. Jake hung a shingle on the door labeled, "Conversations await." But what if those conversations uncovered something he wasn't prepared for? The morning light poured through the window, spilling warmth across the kitchen as Jake scribbled his breakfast creation onto a notepad, his heart racing at the thought of making Mia's pancake dream come true. The act felt increasingly symbolic, nurturing the small joys mirrored his attempts to nurture his relationships, both personal and professional. As he flipped a pancake, the golden brown surface hissed, momentarily drowning out his spiraling thoughts. Today would be monumental. It was the day he had decided to broach the subject of their pasts with Clara, to forge a deeper connection through shared vulnerability. Mia's giggles floated in from the other room, an unexpected anchor to reality. The fluttering excitement of pancakes, coupled with the gravity of what lay ahead, created a cocktail of emotions that left him feeling slightly unmoored. Each sound seemed amplified, as though the universe was reminding him of the delicate balance between nurturing and confronting. After breakfast, Clara arrived earlier than usual, her face a mix of resolve and apprehension. Jake met her gaze, the unspoken words hovering between them like static electricity. He could sense the tension that laced their interactions, a heaviness that had accumulated from their unprocessed histories. As they moved through the day, he resolved to maintain that thread of openness he found in the workplace, understanding that sharing their burdens could lead them to lighter paths. Clara began sharing stories about her childhood, light and nostalgic, but Jake could feel the undercurrents of doubt pooling just beneath her words. He listened intently, doing his best to mirror her openness, valued deeply as it was unfamiliar. Memories of their past shifted into focus: the laughter, the arguments, the shared hopes. He shared experiences from his own tumultuous childhood, speaking about the barriers he felt shaped him, the way they had often kept him from fully engaging in relationships. He wanted Clara to know they were connected by these truths. But as he shared, Jake's mind whispered of the hurt they had endured. Would their past weaken the strength of their current bond, or forge something new? He braced himself against the tide of unease threatening to sweep over him. Just when he thought the conversation was gaining momentum, Clara's expression shifted. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her features, as if she was wrestling with what to reveal next. He leaned closer, gently encouraging her to explore the depths of her own fears. "I'm scared, Jake," she finally admitted. "Scared of what these conversations may unearth. What if we find a past too broken to fix?" Every word felt like a dagger, cutting straight through the hopefulness he wielded. He found himself at a crossroads: should he assure her that their pasts could be transformed into strength, or should he partake in a more vulnerable dilemma, admitting that he, too, feared the consequences of mutual revelations? "Maybe the broken pieces are what make us whole in a different way," he offered, managing to articulate the realization that had unfolded within him. In that moment, he saw the trembling thread threading through their stories and how it could create a tapestry of resilience, woven with honesty. The silence that followed his declaration stood heavy in the air. Jake could feel the tension thrumming deeply, their hearts lay bare, vulnerable and raw. They were standing at an emotional precipice, staring into the abyss of their pasts and the potential for a future molded from that shared understanding. But before they could pursue that path, the door creaked open. Mia skittered in, her sparkling eyes alight with a new revelation. "Mommy, can you share some of those pancakes with me?" The request, innocent and true, shifted the atmosphere, but the glimmer of tension did not dissipate. Jake and Clara exchanged knowing looks, a flash of understanding passing between them. It was a reminder of the simplest but most profound joy, the power of togetherness. The conversation shifted abruptly, yet the underlying current of exploration remained. Could they continue this dialogue, delve deeper into their fears, while also nurturing the innocent joys their daughter thrived on? That evening, as Jake lay in bed, the echoes of the day replayed vividly in his mind, the laughter and the serious tones mixing together in a chaotic but symphonic harmony. He realized that just like the pancakes, relationships required mixing different ingredients to create something delightful, yet complex. However, the nagging question remained: would they find the courage to confront the deeper issues, to lay those hidden truths bare? The possibilities haunted him, that creeping anxiety whispering that while their path could lead to healing, there was also a shadow lurking at the edges, something left unexamined that could change everything. With Clara by his side, and the love of Mia comforting him, he understood one fundamental truth: they were all linked in this journey, but who would guide them through the chapters of pain into the light of healing? Jake closed his eyes, feeling the uncertainty wash over him, a chill creeping in. Tomorrow promised to lay bare not just the past, but perhaps unexpected revelations that could shatter or fortify their fragile bonds. The dawn broke, golden rays slicing through the kitchen windows, kissing the surfaces of the newly polished countertop where flour sprinkled like fairy dust from last night's baking session. Jake stood in front of the stove, wrestling with a new set of doubts and expectations. Today marked a pivotal moment in their journey, a conversation bound to reveal not just truths but the potential for realignment in their shared narrative. Mia's laughter tumbled through the air, a lightness that reminded him why he had embarked on this path of courage. Clara entered the kitchen with a hesitant smile, a silent acknowledgement of the emotional layers that lay beneath the surface of their interactions. "Good morning," she greeted, her voice imbued with optimism yet edged with uncertainty. "Morning," he replied, drawing strength from the resolve they had sculpted together. It was time to face their past and build a future worthy of Mia's bright spirit. Clara joined him at the counter, their proximity a tender reminder of their united intention. As they shared breakfast, he watched Clara connect with Mia, weaving stories into glowing laughter that filled the room. That moment encapsulated what they were fighting for, merging the innocence of their daughter with the heavy weight of unspoken truths. After breakfast, Jake took a deep breath, the air thick with anticipation. "Can we talk?" His voice wavered, revealing the crack in his armor. Clara met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a cocktail of understanding and trepidation. "Of course, let us do it now," she affirmed, and they settled at the kitchen table, hearts racing in tandem. The topics they skirted around flooded back, mingling with the flickers of anxiety that had become all too familiar. "Let us begin with what we've learned in the past few weeks," he proposed, his tone steadying as he focused on the importance of mutual honesty. "I realized how vital it is to share not only our joys but also our fears. I've carried so much guilt about how we got here." The mark of ownership in his words ignited a spark of connection between them. Clara hesitated, and in that moment of silence, Jake sensed that she was weighing her own battles with guilt and regret. "I feel the weight too," she admitted quietly. "I didn't realize how my absence affected you both. I've felt it every day and it has changed how I view relationships." Jake leaned in, captivated by the earnestness of her reflection. "What does it mean for you now?" he asked, desiring to peel back layers of discomfort that might shine a light on their path ahead. "I want to prioritize this family. I never understood the extent of my mistakes until all the pieces fell apart," Clara revealed, her voice quivering as she fought back tears. "I'm committed to being here fully, and I want to rebuild that trust day by day." With her confession, Jake's defenses softened. He realized they both were navigating this emotional terrain out of love, a love that was now laden with shared responsibilities and hopes. "Then let us create a foundation for that trust," he replied. "We need an agreement we can commit to, together." Clara's brow unfurled as she nodded slowly, the essence of possibility igniting within her. "Let us be intentional about it, honest and open. Mirroring how I feel in my own heart helps us both realize that we're still growing." The warmth in her tone filled the room, and a newfound energy surged between them. They began outlining commitments, dedicated family nights, consistent check-ins to ensure they lived by their words. With each gesture solidifying their resolve, Jake felt a sense of liberation pour over him. They were building something unsinkable, bolstered by shared vulnerability. As they discussed the intricacies of their commitments, the prospect of reinvention filled the air with an effervescent clarity. Jake envisioned a solid infrastructure supporting their evolving family dynamics. They would anchor those emotions through actions that demonstrated love in tangible assets: compromise, respect, and understanding. Yet the specter of uncertainty loomed larger with each revelation. "Clara," he ventured, his heart racing, "are you prepared for the times when it might not work out, when we may fall back into old patterns or face unforeseen challenges?" "What if it does?" she countered, determination brightening the air around them. "Perhaps we both need to accept that change is a process. It won't always be linear, but we can promise to work through it together." Her response cemented the idea that accountability, even amid imperfections, is a hallmark of genuine growth. As their conversation flowed, Jake reflected back on their earlier struggles, his heart echoing with a newfound appreciation for their history. This was the moment he had longed for, indeed. Every challenge and misstep had guided them toward this defining conversation. Then, looking at Clara, the the corners of their shared smiles hinted at a deeper understanding. They recognized that the burdens of their past were their roadmap moving forward. It would require radical honesty and unwavering partnership, bolstered by a commitment to celebrate not just the successes but also the journey of forgiveness. Eventually, they drew from the conversation a beautiful tapestry woven with threads of resilience and strength, feelings that had been once fraught with harsh edges but were now becoming softer and more vibrant. As they concluded, Jake reached across the table, resting his hand over Clara's. "I'm thankful we're on this path together." And so, in that moment of connection between shared fears, resolved intentions, and palpable hope, the future unfurled before them. Their commitment to honesty had become the bedrock upon which they would build their family anew, facing obstacles with open hearts and joined hands. Realization washed over him. His focus was no longer just on overcoming struggles but nurturing a genuine partnership, full of promise and potential unbound. As they shared a soft laugh, the sunlight streaming into the kitchen glimmered upon their faces, lighting a path toward their tomorrow, a tomorrow where love flourished alongside fortitude, where life renewed itself with every shared moment. With a firm hug exchanged between them, Jake stepped outside, inhaling a fresh breath of possibility. He was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, guided by the resilience that had been forged from vulnerability and connection. Today marked the start of a remarkable new chapter, not just for him, Clara, and Mia, but for himself as an individual who had learned to transform fear into growth, anguish into strength, and uncertainty into unwavering love. Now, dear audience, it's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and uplift you. Please, leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help share these transformative stories with those who need to hear them. I want to hear from you, so comment your reactions and theories about this story's ending. What dreams do you have for your own narratives? And finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this heartwarming conclusion. Transform your connections and take part in the journey of growth together.